Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers. Hello, and welcome to The Nomiki Show. I am Nomiki Konst, and we have 34 days until the deadline to decide between continuing the flawed but sometimes hopeful democracy we grew up in and fascism. This is the takeaway from last night's wrestling match, which corporate media continue to refer to as a debate. First, of course, this was no debate. Perhaps a joint appearance by two politicians with completely different purposes in being there. Sure, it was anger-inducing, chaotic, ugly, disgusting, impossible to watch. But if that is all you take from this, and it is more or less all many analysts are offering on cable news, then you missed what happened. So let's break it down. Believe it or not, Donald Trump came in with a very focused strategy. For much of the debate, he executed with horrifying precision, disrupting every attempt by Joe Biden to get a clear thought out, bullying, taking over, arguing, and disputing. When the moderator, from Fox News nonetheless, told Trump to stop, Trump just attacked him too. turning yet another journalist's attempt to be a journalist, against him. This is who he has shown to be for years. Are we surprised? That was just part one of the Trump strategy. To, quote, "Let Trump be Trump," a slogan that hung on the wall of his 2016 campaign headquarters. While he was disrupting and baiting Biden into responding to Trump's narratives, that man was also tossing dog whistles and veiled appeals to his highly targeted audiences. Remember how we got here. In 2016, neither the media nor the Democrats understood what Trump was doing. The data-driven targeting that helped him assemble an electoral college victory while losing the popular vote. This dark art produced super thin margins of victory in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. In the winner-take-all world of the current electoral college, that was enough to take the presidency. He got away with this in part because of the way our media and political conversation works in our world of 27-second news and quarterly economic returns. Events fly by with frightening speed and shallowness. We rarely stop to understand the details. And when we do pull back the lens, we pull it back too far and talk in such generality and abstraction as to be meaningless. Trump wins in the middle ground where nobody is watching. In 2016, we painted him as a madman, a huge generality, a clown who couldn't possibly get elected. We were wrong, but we have not learned the lesson. Again, we are painting him as an out-of-control madman, and we are completely missing the method in that madness. This is surgical. Through the beginning and middle of his presentation, there was a message on stage for every single follower and past voter of Donald Trump. It was only toward the end that Donald Trump, high on his own performance, began to go full-on Trump, pull back the layer. That was when we saw the dictator in waiting, or current, laying the argument to defy the election result, praising voter suppression in Philadelphia, and openly alerting white supremacists to stand ready for what will come next. These were not dog whistles. They were uncoded messages to get ready to fight, to get ready for his revolution or his coup. You saw exactly who he is. He is the son of a Nazi. That is what this election is deciding. Can I tell you something that really scared me? It wasn't Trump, actually, at all. It was after, when Biden's deputy campaign manager went on TV to say how well it had gone. Biden is leading in the national polls, she kept saying. No. Talk about needing to get smarter. Forget the national polls. If we didn't understand how close it could be, because the Nazis are so surgical in building their coalition and voter suppression, we are not going to go to work to do the work that we need to do to make sure everybody votes. We need to understand the surgical strategy of a campaign. It's not just presidential campaigns. Joe Biden himself did it in the primary. So why can't they seem to do it now? As Bernie said last week, there is one real safeguard against Donald Trump trying to overturn the election and seize the government. This is to win by so much in so many places that there is no plausible way to challenge the outcome, which is why Biden needed to focus on his message, respect his base, the Bernie base, and add to that coalition, or as we should be calling it, the Popular Front. So find a way to work on that turnout. Don't wait for Biden and his campaign to save us from fascism. We all have to canvass and make calls and do voter registration, legal aid, help with local races. Pennsylvania says it needs thousands of poll watchers. There's more that we can imagine is at stake right now. You're smart to not take cues from centrists or corporate media, but we all have our part in this Popular Front. God forbid that we look back in February with a shut down internet, tanks on the streets, and friends and family rounded up. This is what history shows us. It can happen here. All right, we have an incredible show today. We start off with the brilliant Bhaskar Sunkara to discuss Jacobin's 10-year anniversary, I feel so old, And later we have a spicy panel with Matt Binder and Jordan Zakarin. But first, here are some of the stories from the top of my feed. Establishment Democrats took the gamble that they could avoid accusations of radicalism and socialism from the Republican opponents by dooming the socialist presidential campaign of Bernie Sanders. But Monday night's debate showed us that Trump expected to debate Sanders, the ideas and the issues, the candidate who dominated the discussion on the progressive policy in the Democratic primary. Trump made repeated comparisons between Biden's candidacy and Sanders' agenda for healthcare, policing, and the Green New Deal. While many of these ideas have massive support from the American electorate, making them important topics to tackle during a presidential debate, Tuesday night's discussion and Biden's refusal to engage in these topics only underscored how unequipped the Biden campaign is to respond to Trump's attacks and how unprepared he is to address the most critical issues facing the people. You better smarten up before the next debate. On Tuesday night's debate, both candidates were asked to condemn white supremacist groups inciting violence across the country. Biden's response was, that's my dog, Biden's response was that groups like Proud Boys should instead stand back and stand by, prompting these organizations to remain involved and awaiting a cue. Tweets like the one from Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez capture how this signal only underscores Trump's own commitment to white supremacy, as well as how it spells out a threat to public safety. In a piece for Jacobin, friend of the show Megan Day discusses British Channel 4 News' report that the 2016 Trump campaign attempted to deter 3.5 million black people from voting by targeting social media ads at them. Megan Day makes the point that because Republicans do not win with black voters, the party has seized on the strategy of attempting to disenfranchise them. She also argues the Democrats' refusal to support black constituencies instead of opting for punitive crime bills and anti-welfare messaging supplies Republicans like Trump with material for critique. Hence, Trump's ad, also a trap, quote, "We remember," aimed at black voters and evoking Biden's support for a more brutal carceral state. We have to learn our lessons. And last, it was announced yesterday that Disney is laying off 28,000 workers from its parks, experiences, and products division, citing the ongoing devastation of the coronavirus pandemic. Let's keep in mind that Disney has an estimated net worth of $130 billion. While the chair of the division, Josh D'Amaro, commented that the company was, quote, forced to reduce the size of our team, we should be asking why the wealth of the company, created by the same workers facing layoffs during the pandemic, is not benefiting those workers at a time when they need the wealth the most. Everybody knows that Disney can afford to keep supporting its workers. The company should not be cutting healthcare costs to those that it has furloughed. We need a socialist ideology so that it's not left up to Disney executives to do the right thing. And we're going to talk about that plan right after the break with Bhaskar Sunkara, founder of Jacobin. Welcome back to the Nomiki Show. If you're not already, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe and share this on social media. You know we're a growing show. Bhaskar knows how to start a media company very well. He knows how to start a show on YouTube as well. Bhaskar Sunkara is the founding editor and publisher of Jacobin, as well as a columnist for The Guardian and the author of the Socialist Manifesto, The Case for Radical Politics in an Era of Extreme Inequality. He's also the publisher of Catalyst, a journal of theory and strategy, and London's Tribune. Okay, I don't know how you have any time in the day to do anything, but... Welcome to the show, Bhaskar, and congratulations.
I don't sleep. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm like that, and this is... you dwarf me.
Well, I just started drinking coffee for the first time, like a few months ago, so I've been holding that as my... and I feel like it had really good effects for 2 months, and now it's all like, I'm back to normal, but now I need the coffee. So, Anyway, it works out well.
Yeah. I started drinking coffee early in my adulthood, late in life, I guess, when I was traveling because I was having horrible jet lag. And now I'm at the stage where it's like, if I don't have a nitro in the morning, which is pretty much, a level of drug at this, I mean, it's intense. I am not a human. You don't want to be in my presence. Like, I have this, like, silence. But yeah, it takes a lot of focus to be able to do all this work. So congratulations, Jacobin, 10 years. 10 years, very important years. But when you launched, obviously this was pre-Bernie, pre-DSA's, blowing up of DSA. Can you tell us a little bit about the story of Jacobin's founding?
Yeah, I guess I had been a socialist from my teenage years, and to describe my socialism, it was a combination of a respect for the welfare state and what it could do for people's lives day to day, but also a belief that the welfare state wasn't enough, and an interest in the Marxist framework and in a lot of more radical socialist history. And I think we kind of need both balancing acts. Like, I think it's not enough to just be for a welfare state when we've seen the way in which reforms can be so easily undermined. And we see what capitalists do to every single victory we made. There's a reason why figures like Rosa Luxemburg has compared it to like the plight of Sisyphus. You're rolling a boulder up a hill only to have it roll back down on you. But at the same time, a lot of people are just fighting day to day for a little bit of dignity, for healthcare, for the first time, or for healthcare that doesn't cost a $6,000 deductible to even use, and whatever else. And we can't separate ourselves from those day-to-day, less abstract battles. So that was basically the core politics of myself, was this core politics of Jacobin now. But back then, within the left, a lot of these ideas were a minority. It was a left that was very much, to put it in a broad strokes, critical of organizations, critical of party building, that saw no prospects whatsoever for any sort of electoral action. That's why I give so much credit, by the way, to people like Sama Swat and Socialist Alternative and people like that who were actually running these small races back when they weren't getting a lot of traction, and kind of fighting for that breakthrough. And for me, the goal was twofold. One was to make these interventions on the left, to get us to go back to some of our materialist roots, to say that, okay, we believe in struggles against oppression, but let's bring it into a class framework. Let's bring it into a broader connected movement so we could actually start to build majorities. Because we know that even though we want to leave no one behind in our movement, we need to build on the most broad, most common kind of basis. And that means leaving no one behind in both ways, either not leaving behind oppressed groups by not ignoring them in our program, but also making sure that everybody feels welcome, no matter if you're a straight white male earning 60 grand a year, like, join in, whatever else, just kind of ecumenical spirit. But I think what we have actually done really well was to communicate these ideas, these often very fringe ideas and debates, in a way that's accessible. So I think every Jacobin article at best should challenge readers a little bit. It might not be the easiest read. It's definitely not USA Today, but also it doesn't make people feel like they need a lot of prerequisites to get in. Like, in the same way that to read an article in The Economist, you don't have to have read Adam Smith, though, sure, you should read Adam Smith. But in the same way, to get into a debate in Jacobin and feel like you have access to it, you shouldn't have to read Karl Marx or any of these other thinkers. And I think that's our reason for being. And then other than that, it was a lot of luck, a lot of great, talented contributions. Our design is awesome. That's all Remike Forbes. our designer, not me. We have a lot of very talented people. Megan Day, you mentioned earlier in your intro. So yeah, a lot of it's been luck in the moment, and it's hard to separate the two, right? It's hard to say, okay, where would you have been if not for Occupy, and if not for like the changes that it made in all of our politics and our perspectives about what was possible. But obviously, at a subjective level, right, it takes a lot of work and a lot of efforts by a lot of different people. But we've been blessed by new movements. We've been blessed by the two Bernie Sanders campaigns, which I know looking back, we could say they were failures. But on the spectrum of success and failure, we definitely at least hit 90th percentile, right, in terms of outcomes. Anyway, that's been the last decade.
And that's actually a fair point, because there's so much I want to ask you. But when you launched, this was 2010. Occupy was brewing, and it blew up overnight, right? And this is in the first, for our younger viewers, I mean, I hope you know this, but it was the first years of Obama, and coming out of an extremely unpopular president who's now like a resistance hero, George W. Bush. So there was this appetite for change, and I think what was really interesting about the growth of Jacobin and Occupy was how quickly people realized there was this moment, and we're not going to let Obama take it away. I mean, I think a lot of Democrats did that and just trusted him, and then as a result, he didn't deliver on so much. But from day one, the movement was very smart about putting forward action and pressure that built into something much, much, much bigger. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's interesting. So 2010, Occupy's brewing. How did you build from that? I mean, how did you? This is like early social media still. 4-5 years into Facebook. I mean, how are you able to grow this magazine at a time when also media companies were collapsing across the country, and you decided to they're cutting print, and you were like, oh, we're going to go print.
Well, I think to be honest, one thing that we could say was definitely in our favor was just our small scale. Like, it didn't take a lot to begin with, and we were filling a big void because there wasn't a lot out there advocating alternative views to the left of the mainstream. Like, I don't mean this to denigrate him, but I remember when I was starting Jacobin, Chris Hayes was like the leftmost figure. Like, he was writing for The Nation. I think he was their Washington correspondent. Then he got a show on MSNBC, and he was like the leftmost fringe of politics. Like, even Ezra Klein was like American Prospect. He was center left. And again, like, I actually think these are very reasonable, interesting thinkers, and probably net positives. Definitely net positive if you consider how like messed up American politics is, right? But there was really no visible left. And I think a lot of what we were engaged in on the left was like a legacy project. When I was first politicized into DSA, a lot of these DSA meetings would be people over the age of 55, 60, right? And they'd be very excited to see a couple folks under the age of 20, and very nurturing, very friendly. It was a good environment. They were quite sectarian sometimes and hated each other because of personal grudges from 20, 30 years ago, but they would never kind of spill that over to how they treated the younger activists. I think that we had a milieu, we had a message that was distinct, and also, in a way, print really helped. So it was at a time when lots of blogs were proliferating, lots of online magazines, and the barrier to entry for those are so low that no one really stopped and paid attention. Like, you spoke to your audience, and they would eventually fizzle out, because even though Jacobin certainly grew very slowly at first and didn't have enough money to survive for many, many years, at the very least, we had some resources coming in from having a print physical product that people would see, and also just the legitimacy that conferred, especially older writers. They wanted to write for print publication, not for an online publication, whatever else. So I think that really worked to our advantage. But fundamentally, it's a quarterly magazine, so it's niche publishing. And now that we're growing, we're finally, for the first time, able to invest in more original investigative journalism.
Right.
Obviously, Nando and Anna and our late friend Michael Brooks like helped us start up this YouTube channel, so we're able to do some video now. But
Weekends.
That's So we the weekend show, and then various other things we're doing on YouTube now. But obviously that's very difficult, and it like you need a combination of expertise and friendly people willing to do a lot of work for way below market rates for this specialized work.
Yeah.
And we're now just experimenting with these other things. But one thing I do keep in mind is it's almost as if I was much more pleased when we like hit 10,000 subscribers because we were a successful small magazine. Now we're at like 62,000 or so subscribers, which is great, but we are like way smaller than larger publications than us, and also way bigger than the really successful small publications. So I feel like now we're in this like intermediary period where we need to figure out a way to definitely grow and just continue to root ourselves in working class communities and people, but in a way that's not condescending. It's not a matter of dumbing it down or whatever else. I think it is a matter, though, of providing something distinct and different, because we can't just see that to the right. And that's one thing I'm really worried about in a Biden first term, because people are going to be really afraid of going back to Trump or something like Trump. But ironically, if we aren't an immediate opposition force to a Biden administration, then we're ceding that ground just to the populist right. And that's a difficult thing to navigate, because how do you be an opposition movement, but also be respectful of the millions of working class and poor people, especially people of color, who would have made a Biden victory possible if he's able to pull it off. So there's all these kind of dilemmas that and in general, I mean, this applies to all left of center media, will have to navigate. But the goal is obviously to continue to root ourselves more deeply in something real, be it a movement, be it a social base of people, and not just be this like free floating, unaccountable, thing.
So what I love about Jacobin is it's strategic, it's thoughtful. There's a diversity of opinion that probably many didn't even realize existed on the left, and I in particular love the historic flashbacks to learn from, just we've been here before, etc. So you, as at this moment, right, having some sort of editorial, I think I'm feeling like there's a lot of folks who are losing their grasp. Not everybody, but some folks feel defeated. They want to, stay out of the movement. They may find it easier just to go work for the centrists, or, for lack of a better term, sell out. And you've done some pieces recently that I think are really smart. The perfect example, whether or not he was really in the movement to begin with, is the piece on Sean McElwee. If you haven't seen that, go check that out, because, I think this is my editorial. Like, I think he's essentially a weapon of neoliberals and maybe even some like progressive organizations to control who is able to be elected and not on the left, saying in a very basic way. So as an editor, how are you able to kind of sift through what's real and what's not? And in this like very sensitive moment, especially reflecting back on history and seeing how many moments there have been like this?
Well, I think having an overall framework, like an ideological framework and an intellectual framework, really, really helps. So in other words, in our bones, I feel like we are fairly dogmatically Marxist, right? And the difference between us and other fairly dogmatic Marxists is that we're not, we tend to be pretty flexible. Some might say opportunist, but I would say flexible or tactically savvy about how we communicate ideas and how we win people over. There's a great Joan Robinson quote that I love, which is that she was talking to a friend who was a much more orthodox Marxist, but of course she was kind of a heterodox economist who drew a lot on Marx. She said, the difference between me and you is that I have Marx in my bones, you have Marx in your mouth. And I think that's a lot of what Jacobin does. And that helps, I think, figure out, be able to plug in where things are coming from and see what ideas are serving the interests of capital and what ideas are broadly serving the interests of working class people, or at least explaining something at a materialist level. And that allows us to be pretty flexible in who we publish as individuals on certain issues. So there are certain liberals who don't share our framework or our goals, and we're happy to publish on issues like student debt or Medicare for all. Like, I'm for the decommodification of like all the economy. You're for the decommodification of this portion of the economy. That's fine. Let's talk about that. Or occasionally we publish historians or other thinkers, philosophers, or whatnot, who present a very compelling materialist analysis, but might not necessarily be Marxist or share our political commitments. Like, if somebody wants to explain, here are some of the economic and social roots of mass incarceration, even if they don't share our conclusions, that's someone we would love to have. We would love to have a conversation about the roots of the Civil War, the roots of the American Revolution, and have these debates and back and forth. So I think the real hard line that we have to draw is who's like a reactionary, like who we want to no platform. And I think there's a lot of both, of course, the obvious ones like fascists, but also in general, there are right populists. Maybe we don't want to engage with intellectually, but there are other people who we could actually gain something by engaging with. And it has to be a judgment call. I mean, there's actually some right populists that I'm happy to have a debate with or something like that. There's others that I wouldn't, and you draw the line at like, reactionary views on gender or race that are basically like anti-enlightenment, right? Do you actually want to have we have to be strategic, in other words, and who we're engaging with, and we try to do that, but obviously it's a fine line. There's a lot of contributors. There's no exact party line, which I think is good. It would be it's a relief that there isn't one, because if there was, then it would just be a constant, very sectarian, or this person's in, this person's not in, or whatever else. But there is a box, and I think the box is pretty big, but there is a box. It does exist, and that's just something you figure out over time. And I'm sure you have the same dilemmas when it comes to all right, what guests are interesting that I want to book? How will the audience respond to them? Because you want to both challenge people and you want to present new viewpoints, and you also want to maintain the cohesion and kind of good feelings of a movement. And that's a trick. I'm kind of not sure what the answer is exactly, because we don't want to be an echo chamber, but we also want to build this cohesion. And it's a very fine line.
So that leads great into my next question, which is when growing, I mean, Jacobin has built up, it's blowing up essentially. But how are you able to spill these messages out there into a community that is not as educated, is not as online, is not as well read, rural communities, working class communities? I mean, have you seen Jacobin make a difference? Has it been able to go ahead?
Yeah, well, I think that over the last couple of years, we've just seen from reader surveys and other things that our audience has gotten more diverse and more working class, using certain things we ask, like education for a proxies class, which isn't one-to-one, but it's the best we often have, but just by virtue of it getting bigger. So in other words, America is such a large country that you could reach 2 million people online every single month, and around 60% of our audience is in the U.S. So 60% of 2 million is, I should know that, 1.2 million.
Yeah.
And obviously you're still reaching tens of thousands of more working class people than any other, similar left venue, but you still don't have a social base. So what I'm wary of is often fool's gold. And this is my one hesitancy or thing that I tell DSA members is let's look historically at the new left and other explosions of the far left. And often it feels like if you're in a group of 10 people and it becomes a group of 10,000 people, even the Maoist movement in places like Germany became in the new left era, it feels like you're growing by leaps and bounds. So that means next year or the year after, you're going to have 100,000.
That's right.
Then 1 million, then 10 million, then 20 million. And I think it leads to a kind of insularity and just comfort, complacency, and also just in general leads towards sectarianism. So in other words, I don't know the answer to that. I do know that by having some Branko Marcetic, one of our reporters, is I know that his material tends to reach a newer audience and different audience than some of our other writers. I think it's because he does a lot of original investigative work, and he has like a slightly less like maybe rote framework than I do, right? So I mean, I don't like, I imagine that's good in some ways, bad in other ways, right? Depends on the type of piece or whatnot. But I think that's an example of, okay, doing a little bit more investigative journalism can open up new audiences. On the other hand, hosting debates, like we have hosted like a really big debate with the editors of Reason about 2 years ago. And I still get emails about the debate. Oh, that convinced me, that changed my mind or whatever. And that's a good example of someone who, I disagree very vehemently with the editors of Reason about a lot of things. I think they're actually responsible in some small part for a lot of really bad policies that are grinding down millions of Americans. But on the other hand, you know, they're non-authoritarians, at least besides for the workplace. They're total authoritarians there. But I don't mean their personal workplace. I don't know about that. I just mean like labor capital relations. But in other words, like that's an example of like an engagement with people. Slavoj Žižek, I have a lot of disagreements with, but he had the debate with Jordan Peterson. He won over a lot of people. He presented his ideas out there. So I think we need to figure out a way to continue to do public engagement, to continue to, like, say, have our journalists and other people go in places like NPR and engage in, yes, polite, civilized, you know, discussion. So like, and I think this is my one pushback for what's also a large part of, you know, part of my audience, at least, like the kind of more like irony laden part of the left. I totally get where that's coming from. But in fact, historically, let's say in the 1930s, like we had all sorts of crazy ideas as far as our program when it came to the left, right? But we were able to present a veneer of respectability because it helped us in our mass organizations and it helped us accomplish our political goals. The irony now is that actually there's nothing to hide. We have no association with the Soviet Union on the contemporary U.S. left like our old communists did in the 1930s. We are fighting for a really popular program that people tend to agree with. Everything from Green New Deal, which is close to majority support, to Medicare for All, which is outright majority support. And I think within the next decade, we'll have very clear and outright majority support, even among Republicans. So we have a really popular program. And we're masking this popular mass program that already has support in sometimes very fringe and alienating rhetoric. Whereas, in fact, like regular working class Americans, I think, want to see like fairly polished and professional and serious people making the case for these programs. And it's difficult, I think, sometimes in our generation because we didn't have that media training. We don't come from those backgrounds. I think that's one reason why we're actually committed to these sorts of policies, and we didn't already join the GNC or something like that. And also because like it is like subcultures develop and they're not always a bad thing. Like that's part of building our unity and ties together as a community. Like it's fine for there to be in-jokes among the socialist left and things like that, memes and whatever. Like that's part of building group cohesion. But I think going forward, like I really want to see Jacobin breaking stories and maintaining our media footprint and maintaining this dialogue with mainstream liberalism, especially so that they know that we're out there as a poll. And also viewers know that, like, listen, if you watch Joe Biden and you're like, I don't really like this guy. You know, we want to speak to that, but from the left. So we're not just giving that space to the populist
exactly.
right.
That's exactly it. If you're not in that space intentionally, and you know, I was watching right before our show. I was watching Bernie Sanders on The View, which you know, the Twitter was furious about today. Why does he go on The View? They hate him because it's the largest audience. Why would he not go on The View?
Yeah, or his Fox Town Hall. Like, I know you were on this line too, but it's just so common sense. Like, did anyone watch that town hall? He killed it. And like he's speaking to an audience that actually like is for his program, even if they watch Fox. You know, it's kind of common sense in every other political context, but in the U.S., I think somehow we become very moralistic about these things. I think
yes, in a way that, I mean, I remember when Barack Obama said he wasn't going to go on Fox News anymore. And it's like, You're not going to fund the DNC. You're not going to fund organizing. You're not going to go on Fox News. Who are you talking to? Like, what is the point? Bhaskar Sunkara, I wish we had more time to talk about the future of Jacobin, so hopefully you can come back on and we'll talk a little bit more about those investigative pieces, and we'll help amplify them however we can, because you're doing brilliant work, and it's been very thoughtful organizing, and we appreciate you.
That's great, and I really have loved everything on your channel, and I appreciate all your work you're doing as well, and your support for Jacobin, and for just in general this growing kind of shared project we have on the left. But thanks, everyone.
Thanks. All right, up next we have our panel. We have Jordan Zakarin and Matt Binder. Has he been on the show? I don't think he's been on the show yet. I've been on his show. All right, stick around. Right after the break, we'll be talking about today's news. Lots of it. Welcome back to the Nomiki Show. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and smash that like button. This is the part that is very unnatural to me, so help me out a little bit. Share it in the chat. Go on social media. Please do that. I gotta get better at this. It's an art. I watch some of these other hosts, and they are so good at promoting their shows, and I am so not, but we will get there. Jordan Zakarin runs the Progressives Everywhere newsletter. He's a reporter and editor with The Observer, and he's back again. He's a regular panelist now on the Nomiki Show. Matt Binder is a reporter for Mashable's tech section, where he focuses on YouTube, politics, misinformation, data privacy, video streaming, and more. He's also the host of the show Doomed, a weekly podcast and YouTube livestream that breaks down the latest political fake news, internet conspiracy theories, right-wing talking points, and more. And he's a contributor to Majority Report and Cafe.com. All right, guys. Fake news. Conspiracy theories. Let's talk about the debate last night. There was a lot of that.
Let's do it. First of all, thank you so much for having me on the show, Nomiki. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And everyone should like and subscribe to Nomiki Show on YouTube. I'm still not that good at it, and I've been doing this for a very long time. I'm not, those YouTube guys have it down, don't they? But yeah,
they're so good. Oh my God.
They even have like little songs and jingles that go along with it to like.
Should we do that?
Maybe, right?
All right, so we got some crazy top conspiracy theory of last night. Let's just go around the circle, because let's start with the expert. Matt, you are the expert in conspiracy theories.
Right. So today, yesterday they were throwing around the conspiracy theories before the debate, and by they I mean the right wing, the Trump supporters, and the Trump campaign themselves started throwing them out too. They went all in. They were sending out mobile notifications via their Trump app to really let all their followers and base know all these conspiracies. And the main ones seemed to be that one, Joe Biden had somehow got the debate questions for the night, which the topics were already previously publicly announced like a week ago. So I don't know what else they could have possibly told Joe Biden. They did not give any additional information to Joe Biden that they didn't give to the Trump campaign. And then two, there was a rumor that Joe Biden was refusing to let the debate hosts inspect him for an earpiece so that his campaign could secretly feed in some sort of information or, I don't know, the correct answers to the debate. Let's really just stop for a second and realize that these debates are not like you are asked a question and need to have a correct answer. Right. There really is no correct answer. It's not 2 + 2 = 4. It is basically what you are proposing to do for the country. What could he possibly have needed? He's just regurgitating what he's been saying for years now on the campaign trail.
It's also the teleprompter thing. They have this ad. I don't know if you guys have seen this ad. I wish we had it ready. We'll play it. Hopefully we can pull it up for another show. But they have this ad that's out right now where it's like zooming in on Trump's or on Biden's hand, going like this to the teleprompter, and like there's a reflection in the glasses of a teleprompter. Guys, breaking news! I have a teleprompter. We all have teleprompters.
I don't.
Well, you're special, okay? I need one. I can't focus. Jordan, what was your favorite conspiracy theory?
I gotta say, first of all, I want Donald Trump to tune in and see. I waited my turn. I didn't interrupt, so that's already doing better than him. So, I respect Matt, and I wanted him to get his answer out. So there we go. We're already more civil.
Thank you, Jordan.
Of course, yeah. The conspiracy theory, the idea that they were trying to get Biden drug test as if he. Right. Like, what was he going to be on? If anything, he was high last night because he was so slow and tired. So I wish that he had been doing some sort of performance enhancer or cocaine or what have you. The idea that he was on a wire, again, if he had a wire, I would have been screaming into his ear, mention the taxes, mention the fact that Trump brings up the fact that Biden's son, Hunter, didn't have a job before his dad, that he was making lots of money from Russia. And I was like, your entire administration, your entire family has jobs because of your horrible scam artist company, and then your scam artist time in the White House. So everything he said, Biden, if he had anyone in his ear, would have been like, no, just turn that around on him. So The conspiracy theories, I don't know how you can continue to believe them, especially afterwards. Believe what you want ahead of time. I love the idea of Joe Biden just blowing lines before the debate. That clearly didn't happen. And the idea that
someone blew lines before the debate, and I don't think it was Joe Biden.
I wish someone. I know he did a lot of prep. He stayed in his bunker and did a lot of prep for weeks. I don't know who was playing Trump, but they should have been doing, some real uppers ahead of time. Hopefully before the next debate. I'm
going to throw out a brand new Biden earpiece conspiracy, and that is the Biden campaign secretly inserted an earpiece into Trump's ear and said, "Listen, keep interrupting Joe. Sound completely unhinged. Keep going. You're doing great."
It was like they hacked his earpiece. Right. Well, okay, so this actually, my take on this was Joe Biden's preparation, and I knew some of the people. I know the people running his campaign. Like, we were on commissions together, not on the same side. They're not the most high energy octane people. And I think if you're running against Donald Trump, it's not that you get someone to play Trump. It's that you need someone who has actually debated on Fox News on the right-wing side. Like, I watched that debate and I was like, oh, it's just like every single time I've ever debated anybody on Fox News. But if you know how to do that, you know how to disrupt it. Now, granted, he's totally wacko and will come back more art, but there is an art. First off, number one, never ever take the bait. If they launch an attack on you, you just go back to your message. You go back to your 3 talking points. You just yell $750, $750. Your daughter is being investigated. Like, whatever it is, you find your lines and you go back to it. You don't get sucked in. And I think that's what's just so mind-blowing to me is that the strategy, I don't think it's one thing to say that Joe Biden is old and slow. I actually just don't think he was prepped properly. Even how he handled Bernie Sanders, he took the bait on that one. They've been showing their cards all along. This wasn't some big surprise. What do you guys think of how he reacted to Bernie Sanders?
Now, I would say that. Matt.
No, go ahead.
I would say that, it was like we had said before, I wish they just nominated a socialist or an Elizabeth Warren because they were going to accuse him of being that anyways. It didn't matter who we nominated. That would have been the accusation anyways. Of course, I wish Biden hadn't, used the left to throw them under the bus every single time, whether it's Green New Deal or the public option. I was surprised he even defended the public option, to be honest with you. Even though he said it was kind of a people who don't have Medicaid type deal. That's pretty much what I expect from Joe Biden. I don't know how they prepped him. I'm sure they went over a lot of policy. I don't know why they wouldn't have expected Trump to just be at his mind. What I couldn't believe, what I came away thinking was, imagine working for Trump. That was what came to me, because this is the guy who, first of all, he should have a shock collar, but he was.
That's what I thought too.
They need to shock him, and this is a guy who hasn't been told anything that he's doing wrong for the last 4 years, because if he did, he'd fire them. And so this was like a peek into what it's like to work, to live, to be anywhere near Trump's orbit. And not that I thought Biden was showing himself to be a great option, but anyone who just doesn't want to pay attention anymore, who's just so tired, I guess that was the big distinction that was made last night.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think these debates are real. I mean, there's no one really watching these debates who are undecided. Everyone is sort of at least leaning somewhere at some point, at this point, I should say. But, I think the real motive for these guys when they go out there is to basically make sure that the person who would be more likely to go and vote Joe Biden, or the person that would be more likely to go vote for Donald Trump, actually go out and cast that vote. It's, it's to motivate them to get off the couch on election day, or to fill in one of those ballots beforehand and mail it in. And, I will say that, Joe Biden didn't do a great job. I feel like Trump's bravado and the strong man sort of personality sort of overwhelmed him, and he seemed like sort of uncomfortable at times being up there with Trump. But
Shut up, man.
Right.
Those are his best moments.
That's great.
Right. No, but exactly though, when Biden actually spoke back and fought back, because the point is that Trump's audience likes to see him play the bully. They think having a president who can push people around and take control of the situation is what we need. And if Biden could just, while still being what his audience wants to see, someone who isn't being a complete a-hole like Trump, there is a way to take control of it without, playing Trump's game. And I think Biden needs to find out how to do that, and then obviously perform in that manner, because you got to get the Trump people to look at Trump in a different light. And while he may have performed well for his own base, Trump also did to his base. So they need to, Biden needs to do something about that, basically.
It's interesting you say that about speaking to a base, because there's also this other level layer in which Trump literally spoke to a very specific base. Proud Boys making a version. I mean, they've had their mainstream debut, but they're back for another round. In that he literally made a call to the most horrifying members of the base, the silent members of the base that are growing now because they found their leader. Years ago, I'm old enough to remember when the most far right of the right wing were the evangelicals who are anti-gay, anti-Muslim, anti-LGBTQ, anti-women. We were used to that, and we thought that was disgusting. And there were people in the Republican Party who were preparing to move away from the Pat Buchanans of the world. But this was straight up, it's always existed, but this was straight up white nationalist, a call for them. And right. I just don't understand how at this point, aside from the fact that this is an extremely dangerous game that he's playing, how any Republican centrists that are looking for lower taxes or whatever it is that they want can actually justify voting for this man after that statement tonight. I mean, am I missing something?
Well, look, he's got a third Supreme Court nomination coming up, right? I think that's how they do it. Yep. Amy Coney Barrett will probably get onto the Supreme Court because people like Mitt Romney, who are so scandalized by Donald Trump, they still want lower taxes. They still want deregulation. You don't see the Lincoln Project going hard after, Trump's nominees. That's what they want. Yeah. The thing about Trump is that, in a way, I'm weirdly grateful for, because he's exposed just how horrible these people are and kind of advanced the Republican project far beyond what it was meant to be at this point. These horrible policies are now attached to him and this horrible person. And instead of dressing it up in some sort of decency, the way they normally did, dress it up as George W. Bush being a guy who likes to clear weeds or whatever he did, brush, who knows, or Mitt Romney having 35 children and being a family guy. These are the policies that they want. They're just finally being exposed for what they are because they're attached to Trump. So I'm not grateful that he's passing them, obviously. I think it's horrible and it's lighting the country on fire. But at least we're seeing what these people have always wanted. It just, the emperor now has no well-fitting clothes.
George W. Bush, yes, people wanted to have a beer with him, but then the Iraq War happened in Afghanistan, and he slaughtered millions of Iraqi babies through his policies. So, and Mitt Romney,
now, though.
He's a painter now,
right.
And Mitt Romney, of course, put his dog on the roof of his car and drove across the country. So there were a few cues along the way that these people were not decent. Matt, am I missing something? Even with Amy Coney Barrett, how can you be in this party?
Well, a lot of Trump's base are what I would call casual racists. They're not the type of people who are going to go out. Well, there are a number of them, but the ones I'm talking about are not the type of people who are going to go out and wave the Iron Cross white pride flag. They're not going to seek hail at a conference with Richard Spencer. We're talking about people who, they live among other people in communities where they don't think Black people have it harder than them. In fact, they think Black people have it easier than them. These are people who casually probably drop the N-word and other slurs and, ethnic slurs. And to them, that's not what racism is. They're just, because they don't other those people in terms of going out and wanting a nation that doesn't include them. And I think that's what motivates a lot of people in terms of why they're able to be Republicans. Oh, well, of course we're against white supremacy, but that's not really a thing. It doesn't exist. So why would Trump have to poo-poo on it if they're just trying to get him in a gotcha question, and this is all the media. That's really how they look at it. They don't see it as an actual threat because they sort of live among the very casual version of it, and they don't see it as being racist.
So right before I came on, the Presidential Debate Commission, which is a whole other question in itself, the makeup of that commission. But they decided that they're going to issue new rules because, Joe Biden was spoken over most of the time. For those who don't know, you usually agree to a set of rules before you go into a debate. Although it's, I ran for office and I didn't have that opportunity to talk about those things. But just putting it out there that it's not uniform across the board with every single debate nowadays on media. But they changed the rules. We don't know what they are yet, but it's an effort to give Biden more of an opportunity to speak without being cut off. I don't know if it's shutting off a microphone. I'm personally against shutting off a microphone because if it can be used against them, they can use it against the left. And if you look at movements across the world, there have actually been movements that have been stirred up. I think it was in India. There was a woman who was shut off. Her microphone was shut off. And it staged a huge feminist uprising because, of course, be careful with your weapons. They could be used against you too. But there are other ways. I mean, they had their little minute where they couldn't get interrupted. And believe it or not, like if you go back and roll those tapes, there was a little bit of interruption from Trump, but he pulled back a little bit compared to the rest of the night's performance. Chris Wallace, what's your take on Chris Wallace? How'd you think he did?
Oh, he was great. Wonderful. He really took control of that situation, didn't he? I mean, listen, as the moderator, you can't he was literally like, Mr. President, sir, please stop it. I mean, take control of the situation. Say, you got to stop right now. And really just, shut off the mic. I know you said you're against it, but there's a point where, what's the point of this all? Just let's
I'm not against the caller. I'm not against him being buzzed and ejected. Just the microphone. That's all. Jordan, what's your take?
I think what the problem is that we continuously, the fact that they even have rules and Democrats expect people to follow them.
Yeah.
For the last 5 years, since he came down the escalator and announced his campaign, even before then, just tweeting whatever he wanted to tweet, he hasn't followed any rules. And we're still acting shocked that this guy is saying whatever he wants to say and interrupting people. We continuously, I know the metaphor is spent, but the losing the football thing, it continues to happen, but then it's like Lucy beating the hell out of Charlie Brown with the football and shoving it down his throat. This is what's going to continue to happen until Democrats realize that there are no rules and they shouldn't play by them either. And the media needs to realize that not that the media doesn't matter anymore, but the rules and the norms they have presented no longer exist. They don't matter anymore because look, every time that Trump doesn't play by the rules, then we complain and then he can call people whiners. I don't know why there's going to be another debate. They're pointless. Yeah. They're absolutely pointless. But if they get canceled, right? If they get canceled, then it's going to be like, oh, look, Dems didn't want to have to deal with Trump, and they're all afraid. As long as they play by these rules and think that people respect them and get shocked that Donald Trump is all of a sudden violating the rules, the guy who puts children in cages and will lie and steal and do whatever he needs to do, who's paid $750 in taxes, they're going to get creamed. I just can't believe they still believe that there's any sort of decency or rules at all.
Right.
Go ahead.
To build on that, they're always playing their game, and no matter what, they always fall for it. Like you said, with losing the football, but specifically, look, they're going to change the rules of debate, and you know how it's going to be spun. Trump's going to take it as, look, the media didn't like how I performed because I performed so well. Why else would they want to shut me up? Not because I was annoying and cutting off an actual debate sort of platform. No. It's going to be because I was doing so well and they don't like that. And then, of course, then his base will come out and say how, everyone's against Trump. And no matter what, it's going to be seen as against Trump. And they constantly just fall for this same ploy every single time. And it's going to happen again, obviously.
It's essentially, I mean, look up like the tactics of abusers. It's playing the victim. No, you're coming after me. You know, they put it out there and it's his fault. It's abusive behavior. But cautionary tale here is if you cancel the debates, what does that mean if by any chance we're able to preserve any semblance of democracy in this country? What does that mean for future elections? Will we suddenly just eliminate debates? These are those moments when these things change, and hopefully that doesn't happen. I mean, I still think there should be debates. I think the debates should have been earlier. Most of the states in this country now are doing early voting.
Right.
Our next few days before the election in some cases.
10%
I'm not saying
of people voted already, you know?
Yes, it's insane. 80% of Arizona votes before the election. 80%.
It's not as if debates are some long tradition. 1960 was the first TV and first overall debate between general election candidates. Then they Nixon didn't, like it because he looked like he was dying on screen. He stopped doing them. LBJ didn't do them. They didn't happen again until 1976. So again, these are not long traditions that must be upheld, because George Washington wanted to do it. This is the sort of stuff that can change and should change. I like the idea of primary debates, at least in a primary where there's actual candidates who, have ideas and control their own brains. But, so long as they run another type of Trump candidate, I don't see why Democrats should ever say, yes, let's do it right off the bat.
Right. But the issue is also that everything is so media driven nowadays. And if you turn it down, the other person will obviously just take the opportunity to get their own, their own time to talk on. Because of course, the cable news networks especially, I should say, are going to take an opportunity to have a sit down with one of the candidates because that's ratings for them, especially if it's a Trump type person. I mean, I don't think they should cancel debates. I mean, if you think they're a waste of time, you're going to think they're a waste of time and you just won't tune in. Otherwise, people will watch, and I don't think anyone's going to get anything specific out of them. At this point, I don't think they're going to, they do any real harm or they do any real good, or they're just sort of there.
I mean, if anything, they're a lens into what's actually happening with the campaigns and what they're targeting. And I mean, if Joe Biden was able to get but still, I mean, that comment about Bernie was revealing. At this stage in the election, seems like he should probably warm up a little bit to his base because it is all about excitement so that we don't go to the courts. That's just what I keep saying. Like, don't wait for Biden to save you. Find your own way. Find your own path to organize. It's about a national front. We don't necessarily have to agree with everybody, but at least we got to fight this crazy man from staying in office. One more thing I was just remembering. We have to fact check this because I'm not sure if I dreamt it or if it actually happened or if it was just threatened. But didn't Trump didn't he say that he wasn't going to do one debate and then he simultaneously aired a rally on like Fox News or Newsmax or something in 2016? Do you guys recall that? Where he said, no, I'm not doing the debate, and then I'm pulling the ratings away.
I feel like he's done that a few times where he's threatened to not have debates. I mean, there was that one Republican primary debate in 2016 that he said he wasn't going to show up, and he didn't.
The idea that now that Donald Trump would give up any sort of TV time is so far-fetched. Like, there is no world in which he will give up prime time, 60 million people watching him. Like, I can't, it's like he's an addict. And so the idea that he will say no to that is beyond the pale, which is why Democrats, if they want to keep doing this, should, come up with a few actual rules.
Well, there was that one time in 2016 where Bernie challenged him to a debate. And Trump basically turned it down after Trump was talking it up for a while too, saying how he would totally do it because he would cream Bernie. And then it actually became a thing. Like, Bernie was on some like late night TV show and talked about it. And it became this big like topic of the news the next morning. And the Trump people were just like, why would Trump debate the second place person? I mean, this is a guy who calls into Fox and Friends like every other morning.
Right, exactly.
He's not gonna take the opportunity to.
He goes on Newsmax.
Like, right.
What?
Alex Jones. He was on Alex Jones' show during the 2016 campaign.
Okay, my solution to this debate problem is they do individual town halls, which, they love to do on CNN, and it's with real people, and they have to answer real people's questions.
I think they should have to answer factual questions, like do some trivia and see how many, like if the first one to get a question right, I think will be the president.
And that's where Biden's earpiece will come in handy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Adderall, of course. Got to be sharp. Got to be on top of it. All right, guys, you are a blast. So much fun to have you on. I look forward to having you on again. Thanks for sticking around. And thank you to everybody who has been active in the chat. Matt Binder, what are you promoting right now? What's your...
Go to youtube.com/Matt Binder. I do a live stream version of the podcast every Thursday night. And also I co-host the Majority Report Thursdays for the time being. And doomedpod.com for the audio version of the show after that.
Awesome. Jordan?
We all have so many projects. I got the Progressives Everywhere newsletter. It's progressiveseverywhere.substack.com. I also just launched a new site last night. It's called COVIDSuperspreaders.com. We're going to be adding all the Republicans who, and going through all the different policies and the timeline of the things they did to kill 200,000 Americans. Because I got to tell you, it's really hard to keep track of it all. It's taken me weeks and weeks and weeks to do the research just for the basic timelines of Trump and, Brian Kemp and Ron DeSantis and all those horrible people. So check that out. Send it to people who maybe aren't convinced that COVID was entirely, this disaster was entirely preventable, because it was.
Next week, let's talk more about that. That's so smart. Thank you for doing that. A lot of people who watch the show know that I was on a cross-country trip a couple weeks ago and drove through a lot of these states and saw their policies up front, and it was jarring. Okay, my promotion, because I'll forget. You guys want mugs? We got mugs now. Go to thenomikishow.com. Mugs and swag and stickers and bags. I don't know where my bag is, but I'll show it next time, so make sure to check them out. That's at thenomikishow.com. Thank you to everybody. Special thanks. Who do we have in the chat here today? Shout-outs from yesterday. MIDI Doctors, thank you. That guy, that's like what Joe Biden was saying about Trump. That man, never called him Donald, never called him the president. Red Pill, love and peace from Antifa. There are, and whatever. I'm not going to say anything about the organizing, but feel free to organize in our chat. And thanks to Professor Harvey K, of course, Bob the moderator, Billy Big Bricks, and everyone mixing it up in the chat room. We will see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern right here at the Nomiki Show for our Thursday show. We will see you tomorrow.